In late July, Jerome Powell spoke at the Kansas City's Fed's virtual conference. And at the time, he said he thought that inflation data was pointing to inflation being more transitory, that is temporary and not permanent. Hi, I'm Jim Dunlop, and I'm the managing partner at Advent Partners. I want to talk a little bit about those 5 data points and what's changed since late August when that presentation was given. The first thing Chairman Powell said that day was that broad-based inflation was not increasing at a rate out of line with expectations. In other words, if you take all the volatile things out of the consumer price index that make it move really high, the things that move very rapidly, and look at the broader measurement, it was at 2%, which was in line with what long-term expectations should be for the Federal Reserve. However, here in September, that broad-based measurement is now at 2.3%. It's not dramatic, but it's still a little bit higher than the Fed's target. And that's a broad base of things across the economy. The second thing is that the Fed Chairman Powell thought that high-priced items like used cars, which had really driven consumer price index high over the last year, were starting to moderate, and that we would see a pullback there. And in fact, we did. This summer, used car prices started to go down. But then in September and October, they went back up again. And so that data point is now looking very different than it did just 2 months ago. The third thing that the Fed chairman pointed to was wage growth. Wage growth across the country had been about 2% over the last year, and that was to be expected. Well, now that we have the third quarter numbers in, and that's July, July, August, and September numbers are now in, and wages increased in the United States just in those 3 months at 1.3%. And if we play that out over the course of a year, that would be a pretty dramatic increase in wages. Now, granted, a lot of those wage increases are at the lower paying jobs, but if it costs more to make things, because you have to pay the workers more to make things and manufacture things, then that will drive the costs of those items up more broadly and longer term. The fourth thing is that the Fed looks and surveys the market and investors and to see what people's expectations are for inflation. And still this summer, a lot of people thought inflation is going to be temporary, but that's starting to shift. The market would indicate that people are now getting ready and preparing themselves by buying shorter duration bonds for rising rates because they believe that inflation may be more long lasting and they want to protect themselves if rates were to jump up quickly to fight inflation. And then the fifth thing is that the thing that has kept prices low, and we really haven't seen major inflation in a long time, and that is because we have this interconnected global supply chain. That we have this idea of just-in-time manufacturing, that we can build a car here in the United States with components from countries all over the world, and those pieces come in just as we need them, and we put the car together, manufacture it, and put it on the dealer's lot. There's been a tremendous amount of disruptions as lots of countries fight COVID. And the US is fortunate because we have vaccines and we're pretty far ahead of the curve. But a lot of countries have vaccinated less than 1% of their population. And so they're still experiencing massive disruptions in their labor forces as the pandemic goes through their country. And so that is not allowing all those supply chain things that have come in to manufacture things just in time. That is disrupting everything, and it's making it harder to make anything right now and make it quickly, and therefore that limits supply and it makes prices go higher. So these are things that we're watching, and it's still early to maybe draw too many conclusions, but it would seem to indicate that the data are pointing to a longer term trend of inflation. And it's too early for us to sit here and say one thing or another, but we want to share that information with you because as we anticipate the likelihood that inflation is here to stay, we want to behave accordingly, and we want you to be prepared for it. So stay tuned. We'll learn more in the months ahead as more data come out and we move further and further from the recession that was caused by the pandemic. I hope you're well and have a great Thanksgiving.